I wrote a book called Genesis Geology. This is what the book looks like, and it is available on Amazon. And my husband's going to give me some questions. I'll answer them for Brother Taurus.
So what prompted you to write the book?
The Rudds, who pastor in Taylor, Michigan, they always have some very good DVDs, educational and religious. And we went there to visit one time, and they had a DVD series called Is Genesis History? And I came home and I bought the series and I watched it several times because I'm not a scientist. And it was so intriguing and led me to other books and other authors and other websites. And I ended up buying several books. And it was just so fascinating how in the book of Genesis, how God did such amazing things. And there's so much science in the book of Genesis. So I thought, I need to tell other people about this.
But you don't have a degree in science, but
No.
you have been to college. You do know how to do research.
I do know how to do research. I have 2 master's degrees, but neither one of them are in science. They're in education. But I do know how to do research.
So where did your research lead you?
Well, obviously I would have had to deal with the topic of evolution. And 2 things came up right away. First of all, that creationists and evolutionists look at the exact same evidence, but they interpret that evidence differently. Charles Lyell, he was right before Charles Darwin in the 1800s. He came up with the idea that the present is the key to the past. Now, that is just the opposite of what creationists say. They say the past is the key to the present. So to put this in a down-to-earth, more grassroots concept, if you say the present is key to the past, then you would be saying essentially that what you see of me right now is exactly the way I was 20 years ago, or when I was 20 years old, which is absolutely absurd. Obviously, a lot of changes have happened. There's been situations in my life that have changed my personality. Obviously, I had an interview with the Lord Jesus Christ and was able to change my life through him. That would have been a huge change. But a creationist would say the past is the key to the present. So if you'd say that, then you would say that since I was 20 years old, down through the time frame until now, those changes, whether they're catastrophic or whether they're mild, just maybe natural growth, made me who I am today, which makes more sense. Okay, so the past is really the key to the present, not the other way around.
Now, everything was a slow, gradual process, in other words. Some were upheavals.
That's exactly right. Evolutionists, they disregard catastrophic events. Well, like within recorded history, you have the Krakatoa, and even Mount St. Helens has just totally obliterated the evolutionists' idea of how geology is formed and how the earth is made and how it is reformed. So, things have not worked out so well for them.
Were there any other major conclusions that you've arrived at?
Just that God created all things, and then he had the book of Genesis, where he took what was there and reformed it and created life, made a planet that was suitable for life, to sustain life. And then he totally reformed it again with an unbelievably catastrophic event called the flood. and the earth did not resemble itself. The atmosphere did not resemble itself before the flood. And it took a long time. Even today, there are processes that were started by the flood and have not, I guess I would say, calmed down even today. For instance, we still have volcanoes. The antediluvian world did not have volcanoes. That happened during the flood.
So just to kind of encapsulate, why don't you tell me what most of the basic themes of your book are?
Oh, okay. Well,
and don't forget DNA.
That's your favorite chapter.
It's fascinating.
Okay, so the table of contents is kind of lengthy. It goes for 2.5 pages. So just first of all, we start out with the Creation Week, and there are a lot of things that I learned about Creation Week that I didn't know before. We go through every single one of the days to explain exactly what happened as far as we can tell. Now, obviously, none of us witnessed creation, but as a Christian, we had an eyewitness, who's God, and he wrote down the things that happened for us. Okay, then we talk about the antediluvian world is very, very different than now. The deluge and basically what happened, the post-diluvian world and what it looked like right after the flood. We look at the fossil record, which includes the Ice Age. And today we look at things like radiometric dating, the law of thermodynamics, irreducible complexity, and intelligent design. And we also look a little bit about astronomy. Then we go into DNA. I want to thank Dr. Joe Reveley. He's the one that helped me tremendously in figuring that out. I talk a little bit about the intelligence of ancient man. Ancient man was extremely, extremely intelligent, which is absolutely 180 degrees of what evolution says. And I give you some ideas for further study. And then there are, at the end of the book, I have references. These are the references that I actually used. It's not really a suggested bibliography. These are references. So you can start on your own journey to find out this information. This is a glorious, glorious story about what God did and what he's still doing. The processes, it's amazing to look at the Grand Canyon and realize, look what the flood did in a week. And it's just amazing what God did and how he reformed. There was no Mount Everest. There was not Kilimanjaro. There was not Denali Mountain, or there was not the Alps, the Himalayas, the Rocky Mountains. Those all formed during and right immediately after the flood. So the antediluvian world was very, very, very different. That's why it didn't take as much water to flood the earth as it would have now. So these are some of the topics that I talked about in the book, and I found it extremely fascinating. As a layman, I tried to put it into words that I understood, so hopefully reaching a wider audience.
So what evidence does the creationist view versus what evidence does the evolutionist view?
It's the same evidence. It's just that they interpret it differently. When an evolutionist looks at a fossil, they say, oh, all these fossils who somehow all died in the same place over millions of years. I'm not sure how that happened. They say that man has been on the earth millions of years and that the earth is billions of years old. When we look at the Bible, we need to consider two things. First of all, when did the dimension of time start? And the second thing we want to look at is when did decay begin? Okay, so time started the very first day of creation, because he said the evening and the morning were the first day. That is the dimension of time. Decay, or the second law of thermodynamics, everything runs from order to disorder. That decay began immediately at the fall, because God told Adam, the day thou eatest of the tree, you shall surely die. Well, he wasn't the only one that started to decay. All creation began to decay. Okay. So it's interesting to look at those two concepts, and in the light of when time started and when decay started. You cannot date something that decay has only been 6,000 years old and say it's millions of years old. That's not even possible. So they do err. The evolutionists do err in their judgment. What about radiometric dating? Well, I talk about that in the book, and it's very interesting. The geologic column, we talk about that. We talk about fossils and dating the geological column by the fossils that are contained therein, and then dating the fossils by the place in the geological column that they're placed. That's weird. So creationists don't need to do that. We explain how all that sediments came to rest and where all the fossils came from, why there was deep sea fossils that were buried first, and then on up the line of vertebrate or reptile to vertebrate to mammals. We talk about all of that. So if you want to know what actually happened, read the book.
So is there an email that people can use to get a hold of you?
Yes, actually, it's right there. Kroglinda@gmail.com.